The boy looked no older than 17. His hoodie was torn, his shoes mismatched, and a thin layer of dirt covered his hands and face. Most people walking by barely gave him a glance, but he stood with quiet determination in front of the tall glass tower, the headquarters of Nathan Crane, the billionaire known as much for his ruthless business tactics as for his cold, calculated silence. Rumors swirled about how Crane had once fired his entire board over a minor mistake. This was not a man you approached lightly, and yet this homeless teen did exactly that. He waited outside the building for hours. Security tried to shoo him away, but he politely refused to leave. "I'm not here to beg," he said. "I just want to ask Mr. Crane for work. Any work." One of the assistants overheard and laughed. "You don't just walk in and ask Nathan Crane for a job. That's not how the world works." But someone else saw the boy's eyes, steady, unwavering, and decided to tell the boss. Crane was in his office on the 39th floor reviewing contracts worth billions. When he heard the story, he looked up, unimpressed. "Send him away." But something, maybe curiosity, maybe memory, they made him pause. Actually, bring him up. No one could have imagined what would follow. And 6 months later, when the truth came out, the entire internet would explode with disbelief and tears. The elevator ride to the 39th floor felt like an eternity for the boy. Security stood silently beside him, eyeing him with suspicion. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from something deeper. Hunger, hope, desperation. When the doors slid open, he stepped into a world of glass, steel, and silence. Assistants typed quickly. Phones rang. No one acknowledged him. Until a door opened. Nathan Crane stood at the threshold. Immaculate suit, icy stare. He didn't offer a smile or even a seat. "You're the kid who wants a job?" The boy nodded. "What can you do?" Crane asked. "Anything. I can clean floors, organize tools, carry boxes. I don't want charity, I just want a chance." There was something in his voice that caught Crane off guard. Not desperation, but dignity. Crane turned to his assistant. "Give him something, one task, one shot." The boy was taken to the loading dock and handed a mop. "Clean this place spotless," the supervisor barked. "You have 3 hours." It was a test. A brush-off. But the boy didn't flinch. He got to work with fierce focus, not missing a corner. By the time Crane walked through the space hours later, he stopped in his tracks. The place was shining, cleaner than it had ever been. He didn't say a word, just nodded once and walked away. The boy didn't realize it then, but something in Nathan Crane had shifted. The next morning, the boy returned. No one had asked him to. No one expected him to. But there he was, standing by the service entrance, waiting quietly. The same security guard from the day before raised an eyebrow. "Back again?" The boy just smiled and said, "Wasn't fired, so I figured I still have a chance." Word reached Crane's office quickly. Most expected the billionaire to be annoyed. Instead, he simply said, "Give him something harder." That day, the boy was assigned to organize a massive, neglected storage room that hadn't been touched in years. Dusty shelves. Broken equipment, no air conditioning. It was grueling. No one checked on him. At 6 p.m., Crane came down personally, expecting a mess, a quit halfway through, a teenage excuse. But instead he found every item labeled, shelves scrubbed, even broken tools sorted by parts that could still be useful. The boy stood nearby, wiping sweat from his brow. "Didn't think anyone would come check," he said with a quiet grin. Crane didn't speak at first. Then he asked, "What's your name?" "Jaden." "Anywhere do you live?" "Nowhere," Jaden replied honestly. "Not since my mom passed last year." Crane looked at him for a long second, something unreadable in his expression. "Be here at 7 tomorrow. Don't be late." Jaden didn't realize it yet, but he had just earned the respect of the coldest man in the city. Jaden began showing up every morning at 6:45, even when no one asked him to. He wore the same clothes, still carried the weight of the street in his posture. But something about his presence started shifting the atmosphere around the building. The janitorial team took notice. Assistants whispered, Even executives glanced his way as he passed through the lower levels of the skyscraper, mop in hand, tools on his belt. Every day, Crane found a new task for him: polishing company vehicles, repairing an old elevator panel, repainting a rusted stairwell that no one had cared about in years. And every time, Jayden completed the job to perfection, quietly, without complaint, without asking for more. But Crane was doing more than testing his work ethic. He was watching something unfold, observing how Jayden treated others, how he offered to help a delivery man lift a heavy box without being told, how he shared his lunch, half a stale sandwich, with a stray dog outside. These weren't acts of performance. They were habits carved by hardship. One day, as Crane watched from his office window, he turned to his assistant. "Find out where he sleeps." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, he's living in an abandoned bus terminal." Crane didn't react outwardly, but he stared out that window a long time after she left. Jayden was building more than a resume. He was building trust. And deep inside the man who trusted no one, something was starting to break. One chilly morning, Jayden arrived early as usual, but something was different. His hand was swollen, his knuckles scraped and bruised. When the security guard asked what happened, Jayden just shrugged. Nothing. Just helped a guy who was getting jumped near the station. Couldn't just walk past. He didn't elaborate, he never did. Crane found out later that day, not from Jayden, but from a low-level employee who had seen the boy limping and asked around. "He fought off 2 guys with a pipe," the man said. "Saved an old man's wallet." Crane sat still, absorbing the story. That afternoon, Jayden was called upstairs, not to the basement, not to the maintenance level, but to the 39th floor, the executive wing. He walked in nervously, hands tucked in his sleeves to hide the bruises. Crane sat behind his sleek black desk, unreadable as ever. "You okay?" he asked. Jayden nodded. "Good. I have a different kind of task for you." He handed Jayden a small folder. Inside was a form, an application to the company's mentorship and training program. It was reserved for interns hand-picked from Ivy League schools. It guaranteed a path to employment, paid housing, education, guidance. No one outside that system had ever been invited. Jayden blinked, stunned. "Why me?" Crane leaned back. "Because I know what it takes to survive, and you've done more than survive. You showed me something I forgot a long time ago." Jayden didn't know how to react. His whole life, doors had been shut in his face. Shelter offices, job centers, even teachers who said they cared. Now, the most feared man in the city had just opened the biggest door of all, and didn't ask for anything in return. I don't know if I'm smart enough," Jayden said quietly, eyes fixed on the floor. Crane didn't flinch. "You're not here because you're smart. You're here because you don't quit. That's rarer." The program wasn't easy. For the first time in years, Jayden sat in a classroom, surrounded by young men in suits with laptops and perfect hair. He had none of that, but he showed up early, stayed late, took notes until his fingers ached. While others went out for coffee, he stayed in the back corner, reviewing manuals and watching tutorial videos on a borrowed tablet. Crane never praised him publicly. He didn't offer hugs or speeches. But every week he sent down quiet approvals, upgraded training materials, new tools, and eventually, a clean apartment near the office, fully paid, no questions asked. Jayden moved in with only a backpack and a folded photograph of his mother. The janitor who once cleaned Crane's loading dock was now sitting in meetings, asking questions that made junior executives sweat. And for the first time in his life, he was allowed to imagine something more. And Nathan Crane, the man with no heart, was the one giving him permission to dream. As the weeks turned into months, Jayden's transformation became impossible to ignore. His posture changed. His words became sharper, more confident. He wasn't just learning, he was absorbing. He asked questions no one expected from a former street kid. Questions about market shifts, logistics strategy, operational flaws. He wasn't trying to impress, he was trying to understand. One afternoon, during a staff meeting, a junior manager stumbled over a report. The numbers didn't add up. Jaden, sitting quietly in the back, raised his hand. I think page 7 has last quarter's data, not the current one. That's why the forecast's off. Silence filled the room. Crane looked up slowly. He's right, he said, flipping through the pages. Fix it. From that day forward, Jaden was no longer just the intern from nowhere. He was the one Crane listened to. Whispers circled the building. Some admired him. Others resented him. How could someone with no pedigree, no college degree be sitting at the same table? But Jaden didn't play their game. He remained humble. He still helped the janitor who twisted his ankle, still shared his lunch with the front desk receptionist who always forgot hers, still carried tools in his bag, just in case someone needed help downstairs. And Crane kept watching. Not because he was waiting for Jaden to fail, but because, deep down, he was remembering what it felt like to believe in someone before the world told you not to. Jaden was changing. But so was Nathan Crane. Then came the day that no one saw coming. Crane called an emergency board meeting. All top executives, investors, legal advisors. The tension was thick. Rumors swirled about a merger, a scandal, a lawsuit. But when everyone gathered in the glass-walled conference room, Crane stood at the head of the table with nothing but a folder in his hand. This company needs a new division, he said, focused on community resilience, job creation, training for those the world overlooks. Someone scoffed. And who's going to run it? Crane opened the folder. Inside was Jaden's name. Gasps, laughter. One executive even muttered, "You can't be serious." Crane's eyes narrowed. "You think I'm not? Then leave." Today, silence. Jaden, sitting in the back as an observer, hadn't known any of this. His hands shook. He didn't speak, couldn't. But Crane looked right at him. "You've done the work. You've earned more than this seat. You've earned the chance to lead." The executives didn't understand, but Crane did. He saw something in Jaden that they never would. Not because Jaden was special, but because Crane had once been him. Alone, unseen, dismissed. Jaden stood slowly. "If this is real, I'll give it everything I have." Crane nodded once. "I know." It was the moment everything changed, not just for Jaden, not just for Crane, but for everyone watching. Because in that instant, the myth of the cold billionaire cracked open, and the world saw a man giving back what he never received. News of the announcement spread like wildfire. Within hours, social media lit up with disbelief. Homeless teen now executive? Crane's protege came from the streets? Headlines flooded every platform. Bloggers speculated. Analysts debated. But what caught everyone off guard wasn't just the story. It was the footage. Someone from the office had secretly recorded the moment Jaden stood up in that boardroom, voice trembling but steady, and accepted the role. The clip went viral in less than a day. Millions watched it, shared it, commented, "This is the kind of story we need." He didn't just pull himself up. Someone gave him the rope. People were moved not just by Jaden's rise, but by Crane's transformation. The man once branded untouchable, unreachable, unfeeling, had taken a risk on someone with nothing to offer but grit. And that risk changed everything. Jaden became a symbol, not of charity, but of opportunity. He began speaking at shelters, youth centers, even schools, not as a motivational speaker, but as someone who simply said, "I see you. I've been you, and you're not alone." Crane, as always, avoided interviews, but those close to him noticed the difference. He smiled more, subtly, took more walks, spent less time in glass rooms and more in ground-floor conversations. When asked why he backed Jaden, he gave only 5 words: "Because no one backed me." And with that, a legacy began, not built on profit, but on belief. Jaden didn't let the attention distract him. While news outlets chased headlines, he focused on building the new division from the ground up. He named it Second Horizon, a place for second chances, for those written off by society. His first hires? 2 former warehouse workers who had been let go for lack of formal education, and a single mom who had been homeless with her kids for over a year. The initiative launched quietly, with no gala, no PR campaign, just action. Within a month, Second Horizon had trained over 50 people in skills ranging from logistics to maintenance to data entry. Jayden personally reviewed every application. "If they have heart," he said, "we'll teach the rest." Crane watched from the sidelines. He never interfered, but his silent support was everywhere. In the quality of the equipment, the freedom Jayden had to make decisions, the way upper management was expected to respect the new division as equal. Jayden worked long hours, often skipping meals, often going back to the very neighborhoods he used to sleep in, not for nostalgia, but to find the next kid standing in the cold, just like he once had. And one rainy evening, as Jayden locked up the training center, he saw a figure standing under the awning, soaked hoodie, bare hands, 17 maybe, just watching. Jayden walked over and said softly, "You hungry?" The boy nodded. Jayden smiled. "Come inside, we'll talk." The cycle had begun again, but this time Jayden was the one holding the door open. Inside the modest training center, Jayden microwaved 2 leftover meals from the fridge and handed one to the boy. They sat quietly for a while, the only sound the hum of the lights and the tapping of rain on the windows. Jayden didn't press him with questions. He remembered all too well how much it meant when someone just sat beside you, not asking you to explain your pain. After a while, the boy looked up. "Why are you doing this?" Jayden shrugged. "Because someone once did it for me." The boy blinked. "Was it your dad?" Jayden laughed softly. "No, a man I thought would never even see me. But he did. And that was enough." In the following weeks, the boy, Marcus, showed up every day, first just to hang out, then to help. Jayden gave him simple tasks: cleaning, organizing, learning how to take inventory. Nothing forced, everything earned. And Marcus responded the same way Jayden once had, with quiet determination, like he was fighting for a future that no one had ever promised him. Word spread quickly. Second Horizon became more than a project. It became a movement. Volunteers showed up. Local businesses donated supplies. People began to believe that change wasn't just a concept. It had a name, a face, a heartbeat. And Nathan Crane? He watched it all from his high-rise window. He never took credit. But every time he saw Jayden's name in the headlines, something in his chest, once cold and quiet, stirred with pride. Because sometimes the greatest empires aren't built. They're passed on. 6 months after Jayden first knocked on Crane's door, a journalist published a feature that broke the internet. It wasn't flashy, no drama, no scandal, just a story, a before and after. A photo of Jayden, hunched in the alley behind the skyscraper on his first day, and beside it, a photo of him standing in front of Second Horizon, wearing a crisp blazer, speaking to a group of trainees. The caption read, "He didn't need saving. He just needed a chance." Within hours, the story went viral. Celebrities reposted it. Politicians cited it. Former skeptics who had once mocked Crane for trusting a street kid were now scrambling to appear supportive. But Jayden didn't gloat. He didn't change his tone, his rhythm, or his values. He stood at the center of the media storm and said, "This was never about me. This is about every kid who's been told they're nothing. Every person who sleeps cold at night and wakes up still fighting. If you're breathing, you have a shot, I'm proof." The article's final paragraph revealed something that few had known. Nathan Crane had quietly created a trust fund in Jayden's name. Not to make him rich, but to ensure Second Horizon would live on, no matter what happened. And for the first time in decades, Crane gave an interview. When asked what made him trust Jayden, he replied, "Because he reminded me who I used to be, before I learned to hide it." Crane's rare interview sparked waves across the business world. Investors were stunned. Some admired his honesty, others called it weakness. But Crane didn't care. He had built an empire by outlasting noise, and now he was building something greater by choosing silence over show, substance over spectacle. Jaden, meanwhile, kept his head down. He expanded Second Horizon to 3 new cities within 2 months, recruiting mentors from unlikely places, retired mechanics, single parents, former addicts who had turned their lives around. People who've lived it, he said, not just studied it. He refused to make himself the hero. Every time someone tried to brand him as a modern-day success icon, he'd redirect the spotlight. There are thousands like me. The only difference? Someone opened the door. At one major conference, a famous entrepreneur asked him, half-jokingly, "So what's the secret? What's the formula to doing what you did?" Jaden didn't flinch. "The secret?" he repeated. "Don't wait for someone to be perfect before you believe in them. Believe in them first, and let the rest grow." That line would be quoted for years, not because it sounded clever, but because it was true. Back in his office, Nathan Crane kept a copy of that article framed on the wall, the one with Jaden's quote, not to showcase it to visitors, but as a quiet reminder that once he took a risk on a boy no one noticed. And that risk turned into something more powerful than wealth ever could be. The 1-year anniversary of Second Horizon approached, and Jaden insisted on keeping the celebration small. No red carpets, no suits, no media circus. Just a gathering of the people who had been there from the beginning. The janitor who once offered him a sandwich, the security guard who nodded him in that first day, the assistant who carried word to Crane. But Crane did show up, unannounced as always. He didn't speak at the front. He stood in the back, unnoticed for most of the evening, watching Jaden interact with the crowd, watching him laugh, listening to him speak to new trainees with the same compassion and focus he had shown on his first day mopping floors. At one point, Jaden spotted him and made his way over. "Didn't think you'd come." Crane gave a half smile. "Didn't think you'd last." They both chuckled, a rare moment of shared humility between two men who, in many ways, had built each other. Jaden looked around the room. "You know, this all started with you opening that office door." Crane nodded slowly. "And you walking through it." They didn't need a long conversation. There was understanding between them now, one built not on gratitude or charity, but on mutual respect. 2 different lives, one shared truth. Everyone deserves to be seen. As they stood in silence, a new group of trainees entered the hall, eyes wide, hearts guarded. Jaden turned toward them. "It begins again," he whispered. Jaden stepped up to the front of the room as the new trainees took their seats. No podium. No slideshow. Just his voice, steady and warm. "I know what it's like to feel invisible," he began. "To sleep outside a building filled with people who don't look at you. To be hungry, not just for food, but for a future." He paused, letting the silence breathe. "I'm not here to tell you it's easy, it's not. There were days I wanted to quit, days I thought I wasn't enough. But someone saw something in me, before I saw it in myself. And that one act changed everything." He looked across the room, at the wide eyes, the folded arms, the cautious hope. "You belong here, even if the world told you otherwise. You're not broken. You're just waiting for the right soil to grow." Crane watched from the shadows, arms crossed, a rare softness in his gaze. This wasn't a speech, it was a torch being passed. And Jaden carried it with grace. That night, someone posted a photo of the moment. Jaden, sleeves rolled up, sitting among the trainees, laughing with them like an old friend. The caption read, "He's not teaching them to be like him. He's showing them who they already are." And below it, thousands of comments. One repeated again and again, "We need more Nathans. But most of all, we need to believe in more Jadens." If this story touched you, leave a comment below. Everyone deserves a chance. And don't forget to subscribe, because here we believe the smallest act to change the biggest lives.